go to conciliation, like the conditions or what he was putting on the table of settlement, of like what he would be happy with, is that I would have to let him and all men who claim to be women on the app moderate how women speak on the app so not to offend men who claim to be women. Also go to sex and gender education classes, which could only be re-education. And at the time, I was just like, no.
Welcome to the New Flesh Podcast, the podcast you deserve. My name is Ricky Orpike. Joining me once again is Mr. Jonathan Astro. John, how are you?
I'm good, Ricky.
What's on the menu today?
Well, we have a return guest. We have Sall coming to chat. And I'm going to be honest with you, Ricky, I don't know if you were there when we had we were there. But I'm just saying, I just threw my objectivity out the window tonight. Just blew it. Just got my hands dirty. Just thought, I'm gonna say what I think.
Say what you really think.
Say what I really think. And I hope you enjoyed that.
I did.
I felt a bit embarrassed, like saying it. So I was like, it's just one of those topics that's very it's got a lot of passion,
Yeah. So you think you might have gone a bit too far into the white knight territory? Is that what you're saying?
I must say there was one moment where I was like, I pictured myself in shining armor and just going, I think I might be the savior of women. So I'm sorry about that, women. And Sall.
Excellent. Well, we always tell you the truth here at the New Flesh Podcast, and the truth is we need your help. We need you to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to the show. We're also on YouTube, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a comment about a show you liked, or perhaps one you didn't. We do live in a democracy after all, and word of mouth is also a very powerful tool, so please tell all your friends. And finally, to our Uber fans, if you love what we do, you can send us a little cash via the Buy Me a Coffee platform. Any donation here is very much appreciated. Now, on with the show.
Adult human female Sall Grover is Chief Executive Officer at Giggle, a social media app for women. Prior to founding Giggle, Sall was a successful screenwriter in Hollywood for almost 10 years. The experience of that industry led her to developing Giggle, which we talked about on our previous podcast a little bit. Sall is currently involved in an historic court case that will have serious implications for the rights of women and girls, and she's here to tell us all about it. It also needs to be said that Sall has been one of our biggest champions, and she routinely embarrasses us with high praise on the World Wide Web. Sall, welcome back to the New Flesh.
Thank you so much for having me. I do. I must say, I genuinely do love you guys. And I was just saying before we started recording that I have listened to your podcast with Helen Joyce probably 100 times, if not more. Like I might even be being conservative there. So like all of your views that you're looking, going like, yay, look at all these views.
I thought they were unique.
Yeah.
It's a good episode. Helen's very, very good. She's amazing.
Anyone listening to this, like keep listening to this one and then immediately go and listen to your interview with Helen Joyce, because it's towards the end, but everything she says in it is so brilliant. But towards the end, she gives the best advice I've ever heard on how to deal with this issue and talking to other people. It's perfection. And I've clipped that and I share it all the time on Twitter and people go, oh, wow, that's great advice. I'm like, yes, now go listen to the whole thing, because Helen is, I think, without a doubt, our best voice in this movement.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
completely agree.
Too. Well, before we talk about your online creation, perhaps we can chat a little bit about your biological creation. What's it like being a mother?
Oh my God, it's so much fun. It's so cute. So she is going to be 1 in 3 weeks' time, just under 3 weeks' time. And she has pretty much just started walking. Like it's still every now and then there'll be a crawl, but she's walking. She knows how to do it. Her first word was mama, which was not completely an accident. I did spend the first 9.5, 10 months of her life just saying mama, mama. And my dad, his instead of grandpa or whatever, he's papa. But from the day she was born, he would whisper in her ear, papa, like he'd whisper it. And so that's how she says it. She says she's taken him completely literally. So whenever she says papa, she just says papa. And it's like the cutest thing ever. So I love it. It's honestly more fun than I ever even thought it was going to be. I didn't have, I had sort of, I suppose some, you hear what is said. So you have sort of some preconceived ideas of what's out there in the zeitgeist. Your whole life's going to change, it'll be upside down, blah, blah, blah. And I suppose maybe I was ready for that. But I don't, at the same time, I don't feel like it has. It's changed everything for the better. I highly recommend it. If you're ready for it and you want it, do it. It's really fun.
I have no way of other way of saying this, Sal, but fatherhood has turned me into an absolute pussy. It's been emotional. Does your husband feel the same way, or?
Well, he has. So my boyfriend was married before, and so he has two daughters from his previous relationship.
Oh, okay, so
So this was
he's
not
all
his
wrung
first.
out. No, he's got no tears left.
No, it was great because I had absolutely no idea what I was in for, but he did. And so I remember the first time we bathed her, and the baby bath thing, however many days old she was, I think like 7. I think they say, when you take them from the hospital, don't bath them for X amount of days, whatever it was. I kind of remember now. But we were filling it up. I knew you had to test the water temperature and everything. I knew that part. And I didn't know how to put her in, what to do, but he did. It was like cool. I had like a guide there for all those sorts of things. I never really felt lost. And then I just went through everything else with instinct, because when I was pregnant, I was reading, all the blogs. And one thing I'll say is I found that all the pregnancy blogs I had to read, just to not annoy the crap out of myself, I had to read ones written before 2017 because they would use proper language. Anything after that would call me a pregnant person or assign
Really,
female
you've
at birth.
seen that written in
Oh,
books?
yeah. Oh, yeah. It was there. It was without a doubt there. And so I would, so just through my just research of it all and just clicking on different things, I just found that anything prior to 2017 didn't have that language. And I just didn't want to read it. I just refused to read it. I won't give you the clicks. I won't engage with the article. I'm like, no, sorry. And I just was like, first of all, I don't think there's been these huge, big advances in anything that if I'm reading something from 2017, it's going to be that outdated. And then at the same time, I was like, if I'm reading something that is saying sort of all this ideological language, I don't trust anything else you're saying, so I won't read the article. If you're going to use sort of the gender ideology language, why would I believe anything else that you're saying is based in fact? So yeah, I didn't read it, but I stopped reading them altogether because the best piece of advice I got was have your baby, get to know its personality, and treat it accordingly. Don't try and fit a square into a circle. I think just deal with the baby that you have, and that was the most liberating thing. I was like, I don't need to read anything else. I'll just do this instinct and get to know her, and yeah, it's been great.
Great advice.
So, Sal, recently there was an event at Parliament House in Sydney where you were a speaker, the first speaker, actually. Can you tell us about that event?
Yeah, it was so fantastic. So basically, we've just decided to take matters into our own hands and, work with politicians who will speak to us to do events at parliaments and invite all MPs to it, to be like, come and just listen to what we're saying. It's as simple as that. You don't have to agree, that's fine, but just hear it at least. Because if you just rely on the media or social media or people seeking it out for themselves at this point, I think we've proven that it's not going to happen. So it's just you just go, okay, well we'll do what we can. So it was fantastic. It was Kirralie Smith and Kath Deves who organised this particular one with John Ruddick, I believe is a New South Wales MP. And so, yeah, it was me, Kath, Kirralie, Angie Jones, Jasmine Sussex, who you've had on the show. You've had Angie Jones on the show as well. Justine, and I'm going to forget her last name. This is mortifying, but she's just the latest. She's the newest sort of one who's really spoken out. She is a psychiatrist for children, and she's spoken out and said, this gender affirming, this is nonsense. You can't do this. And called for a federal inquiry into what is actually going on with these, with the treatment plans for gender dysphoric children. She was absolutely fantastic. And also Moira Deeming, obviously, and Holly Lawford Smith, who you've talked to as well. And if I'm forgetting, I think, is there one?
It's a hell of a lineup.
It was brilliant. Fantastic.
And there was also a rather limp-wristed protest by exactly who I thought would be doing it, by the way. The camera swung around and showed me, I don't know, was there 3 of them, maybe 4, young, white, university elite girls, who probably identify as queer despite being completely straight. What did you make of it?
2 girls and a guy. And what was interesting,
yeah.
so Kath has shown it since, so because the vetting that we did to make sure that there weren't any activists in the room was as good as you could sort of get it, in terms of just, only share there was a specific email for it, only share it with people that you feel safe with, like in terms of, who are safe to come along, to keep the TREs out, because it was just an opportunity to just speak really plainly. We had 3 to 5 minutes each to talk. It was quite a strict time frame because MPs have to go back, their day is really, really timed. So we just didn't want the chaos of protesters or anything like that in this particular environment. And this particular group, they just posed as people who wanted, I read the email, they were like, yeah, we're just really excited about what you guys are doing, we really support it, and want to learn more. They came, they did their thing, and then they're so stupid that they then, from the same email, send an email saying, haha, fuck you all, you're all so horrible. And like, well, now we know who you are. And I think it was Anthony or something was the name of this particular account. And yeah, just wanted to come to cause a problem. And when they started speaking, like Kath, who was the MC, had literally just gotten up to say welcome to everybody, and they just started screaming, trans women are women and you're hateful bigots. You're like, you haven't even heard what we're going to say. You don't even know what we'll talk about. They could have and they were totally welcome to, even if they were against us, they are totally welcome to just sit there and listen. As if I went to one of their events, I would just sit there and listen.
So how do they get this email? Is there a mole in the ranks
I
somewhere?
have no idea. Maybe. Who knows? I have no idea.
I know how you could have ratted them out. All you'd have to do is just show them a bit of Seinfeld or a bit of Friends or something. And if one of them said, "Oh, geez, this is a bit white, isn't it?" Then you go, "Well, we know who you are, mate. We know who you
Yeah.
are." It's the wrong answer.
It's so funny. We're building the new platform right now, and you know how you have those, the name's going to just completely escape me right now, but before you go into things, and it's like, choose all the squares with the traffic light things.
Oh yes, capture.
Yeah. So I wanted to have one for out, because we've got to do one, and I wanted it to be like choose the squares with women in it.
Yes. That's great.
Yes, you should do that.
Yeah, it's not as easy as that. They're actually like sort of industry standard, unfortunately. But that was really cool if we could just have that, and just have like just a bunch of men. And it's just like you just have to choose like the 3 like blue squares of sunshine in the background or whatever. Yeah.
Well, it would be a good test.
Yeah.
But all the women you mentioned before, such a broad spectrum who are part of this movement. Angie, Holly Lawford Smith, Catherine Deves, Maura Deeming, just those 4, and yourself. I would imagine I could, in 5 minutes, find some differences of opinion on quite a range of issues.
Totally. I mean, I'm pretty agreeable, and I think I'm probably very much in the center of them all. But even, Angie and Kira Lee have spoken about it. Like a few years ago, Angie used to, be against what Kira Lee was doing, and she used to message and comment on her things all the time. And now here they're coming together to work on this. To me, that's democracy in action. That's society. That's brilliant. Like that you can go, okay, I might disagree with you on other things, or I thought I did, but now I've heard your point of view, and maybe I understand it better. And I, like, say with my thing with Kira Lee, like I just think she's fantastic. I love her, but I've said to her, I'm like, I don't particularly agree with like your sort of language argument about the changing of marriage, which was sort of the opposition to gay marriage that her organization had at the time, because marriage is a man-made concept, and so I think that there is room for interpretation or an evolution of that concept there to just include sort of same-sex people, but attracted people. But when you're dealing with concepts like woman and man, these are not man-made concepts. They just exist in reality, and there is no evolution of them. So I don't agree. I get what she's saying, and there's an argument there. I get it, but it hasn't convinced me. But she's fantastic. She's brilliant at what she does, and she's 100% right about this issue. And I'm so proud and honored to stand next to women like Kiralee and Angie and Kath and Jasmine and Moira and Holly.
But if all those women, stood in a line along with Pauline Hanson and a range of other women, and said pretty much the same thing, it would get me rethinking my ideas. Like, I'd be like, oh, Jesus, these women are all very different, yet they're all pissed off at the same thing. Yet, maybe there's some truth in that.
Pauline Hanson is an interesting voice on this because she does agree with us on this issue, and she's spoken out about it, and she's right in everything that she said. And so she is someone who I would really disagree with on lots of other issues, and sometimes have been like, oh, I don't know if I really like you. Preface everything by saying that you don't have to like other women to think that they deserve rights. You can actually think someone's just like a dick and go like, yeah, you still deserve women's sex-based rights. That's fine. But Pauline Hanson actually has spent the last 25 years having an Australian drag queen called Pauline Pantsdown building a career imitating her. So she actually does have a little bit of insight into the psychology of having a man actually impersonate you to build a career. That's really interesting to me. So I want to know what she has to say about that. How many women have that insight? And just in terms of like sort of some of these men who are more aggressive, not saying that Pauline Pantsdown is one of these men, although he's blocked me and he won't engage with anything most of us saying. He's quite a pathetic TRA. But, and I'm talking now about like the actual really, really horrible, violent, pushy ones. It is psychologically soul destroying, really, when you're dealing with it every single day. And so when you've got someone who's got a little bit of experience in this in some capacity, why not just listen? I don't know. I'm just not from the school that you have to agree with somebody 100% of the time. I just think that if you are agreeing with someone 100% on something, then you're not thinking for yourself. Because I can be like, oh, I really agree with this person on this issue, but I really disagree with them on that. And cool, now that's made me think, what are my actual thoughts on these particular things? Jordan Peterson is one who I would say, I think he's right, a decent percentage of the time. When he's right, I'm like, oh, yeah, I really, really agree with you. And when he's wrong, I'm like, oh, fuck, I disagree with you. Like, Jesus Christ, how could you get this so wrong? But fantastic. Isn't that humanity? When did we fall into this thing that you could only respect people if you agree with them 100%? So you have to give away all your critical thinking faculties.
Well, most of the time now, people pretty much agree with someone literally 99% of the same things, and then there's just this 1% where they're just like, oh yeah, it's probably gender or something like that, and yeah, it's suddenly it's a jihad. That person's got to go.
You see it happening all the time in the TRA world as well, where you can have people who agree with each other 100% of the time because they are just regurgitating the dogma of it all. And then someone slips up and they pounce immediately. And it's always fascinating to watch when they do that. Pink News is experiencing it at the moment that, heaven forbid they write an article where they just refer to the LGB or they just, talk about a lesbian and mention that she's same-sex attracted. I mean, they get absolutely trolled by trans activists. And I mean, this is their Bible. Like, this is their voice. This is especially in the UK, a huge reason why they got any kind of traction, even though I don't think that their pull is as much as they claim it is, but it's obviously doing something. And yeah, you deviate from the dogma for a second and they'll go at you. Whereas I don't know, I sort of exist in this world, and maybe this is probably not everyone could say it. I exist in this world where I just don't. I don't belong to anything. I want to strip away any labels at this point. Because while I might have once upon a time, I definitely call myself a feminist, and I still do, but I am at the point where I'm like, I don't need the label. I don't want any connotations that come with any label, or anyone thinking that I believe in things that I have not expressed that I believe in, because we're in this label heavy world, and it hasn't helped anything. So I want to run in the opposite direction and be like, I'm just here. I'm not left. I'm not right. I subscribe to none of it. I'm not feminist. I'm nothing. Like, there's certain philosophers, certain political thoughts, little parts that I like of each of them, and I then think for myself and come up with my own opinions. Thank you very much.
Well, Sal, since we last spoke, now I know we have new listeners, so I think it might be worth stepping back and starting at the beginning, and maybe you could give us an intro to Giggle, your app for women.
Yeah, so I'll preface it by saying that it's down right now. So please, every time I do these things and then people go and try and get onto it and go, it's not working, I'm very aware it's not working. It's been down since August last year.
But get off Sal's back. All right, just leave her alone, you trolls. Come back later and use the product, of course.
Yeah, we got to the point last year where it was, we'd been treading this water for a while because we got cancelled, which I'll talk about in a second, and we had to decide whether we would do a big update on what we had or implement everything we'd learned in our 3 years of treading water and rebuild it. And we decided to rebuild it. And in doing that, it meant we had to take it off, and we had no product out there, sort of no business sort of currently in the marketplace, which, it just is what it is. I mean, I never thought that we would get cancelled to the extent that we had. I was in the Me Too bubble a little bit because I'd experienced it when we thought of it. And basically my mum and I said, oh, what if there was, it's just an app for women. Initially, the idea was just going to be a roommate app for women, because I had been looking for a room to rent in New York, and there'd been all these, I went on to roommate.com and all those places, and there'd been all these guys saying, oh, you can live here rent free if you walk around naked.
Of course.
They even said it.
Yeah.
They said what we're all thinking. Okay.
And I was just like, can there just be one area of my life where we don't have to deal with this shit? And I was like, yeah, what about just like a female-only roommate app? Because quite often who you're looking for to live with, whether you can state it or not, you have a biological sex in mind. Like, if you're a group of guys, you want another guy in there. You don't want another girl. I mean, maybe you do, but we're talking just across the board, or at least having the option for it. So we just started with that, and then the idea sort of grew, and we're like, oh, well, freelance work, lesbian dating, different support networks, all that sort of stuff. So we just sort of grew it into this sort of one-stop shop app for women, basically. And it hadn't been officially released or anything. And the trans activists of Twitter and Reddit, who I did not know existed, I had no idea of this world, found it and inundated us. I woke up on the 7th of February, 2020, to 1-star reviews, abuse on an app none of them had ever used, or some of them had gotten through because our security wasn't completely in yet. But as time went on, none of these people had used this app. And they canceled us. I mean, when I hear people say cancel culture doesn't exist, I'm like, it does. I've been living it for 3 years. I mean, yes, I've had to go out there and build a platform for myself of saying men aren't women, which is the stupidest thing anyone can ever say. But I've had to do this and, work my ass off to be heard, to be able to give the thing I was originally doing that got cancelled a chance to survive. The cancel culture is real. It's harmful. I mean, it changes every aspect of your life, like physically, financially, and psychologically, because you sit there all the time going like, am I living in an upside down world that I have just been absolutely punished for creating a platform for women, and then having, all of these people in media say that I'm a horrible, horrible person for doing so, when the first niche app, social network niche app to take off was Grindr. It was a dating app for gay men. I mean, the first ever app to take off was a sex-based app, like biological sex-based app, excluding 50% of the population, and like all power to them. Of course that gay men should be able to have a dating app. Grindr, unfortunately, actually has gone the way of gender ideology and is now welcoming women who claim to be men, and that's a horrible thing for gay men. And there needs to be a man who goes and creates a new one for them. But I just, before I knew about gender ideology, I was very much into, this is just normal. You create something for the market you want to create it for. And I just did not know that there was people who are actually insisting that men are women, and that laws had been changed to favor that. It was bizarre to me.
So we'll step through it now. Correct me at any stage if I'm getting muddled, if I get things wrong, because you're the expert on this. So you were initially taken to court by, am I using the right term? Taken to court by a user of the platform called Roxanne Tickle. Is that right?
I mean, user of the platform is a strong word. And
An alleged user of the platform. I think they've. Well, the Guardian says, I quote, an Australian transgender woman who says she was barred from using the female-only platform Giggle for Girls has sued the social media site for alleged discrimination, close quote.
yeah, I mean, the she word just jumps out at you there, doesn't it?
There was no picture provided on this particular article.
Which is a huge problem, because I think that a picture should be provided, because one of my points on this issue is that I saw a man, and I think it's important for people to see what I saw to understand where I'm coming from here. Not to say that any man who really successfully emulates a woman, which they really don't, but there's some who might do it a little bit successfully, at others, at least at first glance. And that's what a lot of people have a picture of in their minds. But when you see a man, you see a man. Women especially have spent our whole lives making sure we can spot one. And so, to be punished for that is crazy. But yeah, so no, this person was not a user of the app in any meaningful capacity. And they initially did a human rights complaint, an Australian human rights complaint, on the basis of gender identity discrimination. And I was 15 weeks pregnant at the time when I got it. And so, gosh, I was 15 weeks pregnant when this started. I'm about to have a 1-year-old. The trial date's in April next year. I'm probably going to have a 2-year-old by the time we get a verdict. If it goes to the High Court, I'm going to have a 3-year-old. Like that's just the scope of what I'm looking at here. But it's because it's been exhausting. But so, yeah, he did a human rights complaint saying that he had been kicked off Giggle on the basis of gender identity discrimination. And I didn't know who this person was at the time. Specifically, I had, in terms of his sort of activism on a whole that he does, he had, when I looked back, when I got the human rights complaint, I looked back, and this was someone who is the only person who had ever called and texted my phone to try and get on the app. And when I got a text and a call, I didn't answer the call, but because I don't answer any unknown numbers, but I got a text and they said Roxy Tickle at the end of the text. And I was like, saying, I can't get on to the app, and I'm a transgender woman and I've been denied access to the app. Or something to that effect. I wish I'd screenshot the text. I didn't, because I didn't think this person was going to take me to court. But I went on to our servers, and because the only anchor point of the whole thing was phone numbers, I typed in the phone number, and so I was able to see the selfie and went, well, that's just a man. And I called my dad and I said, so this man who claims to be a woman is trying to get on Giggle, which men tried to get on Giggle, whether I knew what they claimed or thought in their head is irrelevant. Men tried to get on Giggle very frequently, sometimes thousands a day.
We'll try anything. We'll do anything to get in there.
And so I called my dad and I said, what do I do? And he said, block his phone number from your phone to keep yourself safe, and don't tell your mother, because my mom's always perpetually just, true proper mother about it all, looking out for my safety. So I did. I just blocked his number and I thought nothing of it. And then I got the human rights complaint. And the first thing I thought when I got it was, oh shit, now I have to tell mom.
Was this a letter? Did this come in a letter that came for you, or an email? Or
First of all, they sent an email saying, like, is this Sall, CEO of Giggle? We have something to send you. And I wrote back and said, yeah, it is. And then they sent it through, like, oh, we're really sorry. No, it was like, it's so stupid. It was like this, we're really sorry to tell you that you have an Australian human rights complaint against you. And you're like, oh, I'm sure you're really sorry. Like, this is your bread and butter. Like, whatever. Okay. Anyway, so the first person I called was Kath Deves because she's my friend and she's a lawyer. And so I called her straight away. And Roxanne Tickle had actually made complaints about her in the past. And so she was able to sort of place him of like, oh, this is someone who's done stuff to me. And so I was like, oh, so I went and started researching him based on that. I never had before. I'd never thought of. I mean, I've dated men. I've not Googled. I'm really bad with this sort of stuff. And so I then started going and researching this guy, and he had in February 2021 we had a Twitter exchange. I think it was like 2 or 3 tweets. I didn't know who it was. It was just a random TRA account, basically, from my perspective. And I've blocked 10,000s of them. I'm quite indiscriminate about it because, especially in the days with Twitter where you could get banned if they just made a complaint, you could get banned. I blocked them all the time so that they wouldn't ban me. And we'd had a discussion about female in these spaces, and I'd said something to the effect of like, I support trans women's right to be however they want to be, but female in these spaces are for females. And then I blocked because that's what I do. I'm just like, the conversation's over. I don't want to get banned or any punishment here. I've said my bit there. And then so when I was doing my research, I found that this person had then done a tweet on that day saying, like, Sall Grover, CEO of Giggle, has blocked me after we had an amicable, and it was amicable, discussion about female-only spaces. And then he joined the app. So he joined the app knowing exactly how I felt about female-only spaces, knowing I would kick him off it. And now we're in federal court.
Well, Sal, I reckon there's a lot of people out there who don't have a clue about this. So maybe you can clue us in. What is the Australian Human Rights Commission? What do they do? And what have your dealings been like with them?
What do they do? I don't even know if they know at this point. So the Australian Human Rights Commission, I mean, it's just, is it a lot? What is it? It's sort of an organization that's there. It's a pre-court organization, I would say. They do lobbying sort of stuff, obviously, as well, to change laws. And they definitely were instrumental in getting gender identity into the Sex Discrimination Act. But in terms of how they are there for the public, when you have a situation that might be a human rights violation, you can go to them and then they can tell you what to do. And so you can do a complaint to the person or the organization, whatever.
Without having to face your, you don't have to go through the messy business of like presumption of innocence or having to present yourself to the person you're accusing. You don't have to do any of that business.
Yeah, the expense of court, basically, I would say. It's sort of this thing prior to the expense of court. So they don't have any ability, like they don't have any jurisdiction or anything. They can't like sentence anything or like change anything. They can mediate. A conciliation is what it's called. And
can you tell them to F off? You know what I mean? Like, because I'm so naive about this. I'm outraged as well. Who are these people? What is this? Why, if there's a problem, like if someone's aggrieved me, shouldn't I go to the police and then go through the courts? What do I need this group, this middleman for?
I mean, if they were actual people who were there with a really strict mandate of what they were doing that was not ideological, that was very much based in fact, I can understand the reason for it. How it stands right now, I don't understand the reason for it because it seems incredibly ideological to me. Proven by the fact that the Australian Human Rights Commission has intervened on this case and seemingly on the side of Tickle. So, I mean, my instincts were right. But basically, yeah, you go back and forth. I got a lawyer straight away. Anna Kerr from Feminist Legal Clinic acted for me. And so we went back and forth because I honestly I didn't know what to do. Yeah, like as you say, like I don't know who they are. I didn't know what they did. I've never had any legal issues in my life. I've never even been divorced or anything. Like I've dealt with nothing other than an immigration lawyer at one point when I was moving to the US. So I had no concept of anything. And we went back and forth, and basically, to go to conciliation, like the conditions or what he was putting on the table of settlement, of like what he would be happy with, is that I would have to let him and all men who claim to be women on the app moderate how women speak on the app so not to offend men who claim to be women. Also go to sex and gender education classes, which could only be re-education. And at the time, I was just like, no, maybe I would have gone out of curiosity, and I might have even gone to sex and gender education had I not been pregnant. But by this point, I was about 30 weeks pregnant. And I was like 37, like, and what they call a geriatric pregnancy. But I've been sick the whole time. I wasn't putting myself under that much stress. I was like, my curiosity is not going to make me go and do this. Like, I'm just taking care of me at this point and the babies. So I said no, knowing that I would not agree to any of those things. Like, we weren't going to come out of that in like this, like, we found our common ground. No, because unless he was going to find common ground, and he has done an interview where he says all he wanted was to sit across the table from me and ask me why trans women aren't women. And I was like, well, if that was the case, why didn't you put that in the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint that you just want to sit across the table from me and ask me that question? Because for me, that's quite an unstressful situation. I would sit there and explain why you're not a woman. It takes about 4 words.
But I mean, I'm fascinated by this mediation process. We'll move on to the next part shortly. But I mean, all that was missing was that you would have to be this person's butler for a year, by the sounds of it, as well. But secondly, are they just allowed to reel off this laundry list of demands, and then you're not allowed to? Why can't you say, well, yeah, I want you to, I don't know, like do A, B, and C? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
is this a mediation, or what is this? Like, I mean, I've got some stuff I want you to do. Get a better haircut. Would be one thing I would say. And that's me, Sal. I'm not throwing Sal in on that. There's nothing to do. If you got problem, if that's it, maybe I'm going to the AHRC
Maybe
now.
you are. Maybe you are. Actually, is it Isaac Butterson, the comedian? He had a Queensland human rights complaint because somebody was offended by a bit in his stand-up comedy act that he had done that they'd watched on YouTube.
Yes, I believe it. He
Wow.
does go pretty hard though.
Like, just turn off YouTube if you don't want to see it. Like,
No.
who gives a shit? Like, I don't know. I mean, you've got to give permission to other people to be offended by them to a point. I'm offended. I'm offended by this whole situation. Like, no one gives a shit about that, and I wouldn't make anyone care about it. But yeah, so yeah, there was no opportunity for me to go. Or from my perspective, it was never presented to me that there was any opportunity for me to go, okay, well, I counter all of your stupid claims with, I want you to do the chicken dance. What was I going to ask? My thing I would be asking was just please leave me alone. Stop stalking me online. Don't do this. Just go and use like all the other apps that are available to you. This one's female only. Don't force me to believe that men are women because it's not going to happen. That would have been what I would have been putting there. So as you can see, there was just this huge conflict. We were never going to agree in some conciliation. Like it just.
So what is the Australian Human Rights Commission? What powers do they actually have, or are they just sort of fronting up the money for lawyers?
Yeah, in that situation, none. So yeah, it's a little bit of a money making thing. But as I said, there are times when they are really valuable. I would argue in this particular one, not, but there are times when they are. Because you do have, you have different things, like whether it's with like refugees or like, say pre-gay marriage, there would have been situations. then there are like sexism and Me Too cases with women. There are different things that they are there for discrimination or something with human rights. So yes, you want some sort of independent human rights body looking out for the people, but I think the key word there is independent. And anyway, so what happens is if you don't agree to go to conciliation / if nothing's agreed upon, then the applicant can basically be advised by the Human Rights Commission of what to do. And that is you've got 60 days to file in federal court. Because it's an Australian human rights, it immediately goes to like the Australian federal court. So that's what he had at his disposal, because I said no to conciliation. And so he did. He filed in federal court, and then he withdrew. To cut a long story short, he withdrew a month later around that, signing at the time for no reason. It was just it was like 2 weeks before I gave birth, to give you the time frame. And it was, he's withdrawn. I was like, oh my God, like, this is you stand your ground, like we won. This is fantastic. And then on December 22, so that was in the beginning of July. So then on December 22, he refiled on that same claim. Now he had 60 days from the Human Rights Commission complaint ending to file in federal court, did so, withdrew, and then he did file again in December. So what he was then asking for was to be heard out of time. And that's when we found out that he withdrew because he didn't think he had the funds to go to the High Court, which I had apparently said in some sort of interview. But when I've looked back and dates of interviews, I think I really only spoke about this after the filing had happened, and very much so after it had all been withdrawn, saying that we would take it all the way to the High Court. But yeah, I think he knew that that's what was at stake. And so he had to get the judge the federal court to agree to hear it out of time. And the federal court will agree to something that's out of time on a few different conditions. One of them is something is in public interest. And this is obviously in public interest. And at this point, the Australian Human Rights Commission had intervened to be amicus curiae in the case.
Well, Sal, let's tease that out. Why is it in the public interest?
Yeah, I think the federal court is obviously, I've got my own personal opinions, basically. The federal court must be aware that there is this dispute going on between trans activists and women, because it's becoming more and more prominent. It's been prominent internationally for a while, but now in Australia, it's really started to gain some traction. And so they obviously knew that it is something the public cares about. Then the Australian Human Rights Commission basically solidified that by saying that they wanted to intervene as amicus curiae, that they wanted to, have this court case seen through to the end. And so it was, I think that was pretty much what Justice Bromwich said in the end. It was them coming on board and wanting to be part of it. So basically now we're in the situation of the stupidest, court case name of all time, Tickle v. Giggle, for something that's so important. It's basically gender identity versus sex, under the guise of Tickle v. Giggle, which, oh my God, it's mortifying. But it's really important. So basically, as I'd said, last year, I've been willing to fight this to the High Court if necessary, and that's never ever changed. I'm still willing to do it. And so when, this came up again, I was like, I can't believe this is happening again, but okay, it's happening. Let's go for it. Here we are. If the judge, gives him leave, let's just do it. And so here we are, and it's taken us, 6 months to get to this point. It's just a lot of waiting around. It's really, really quite boring. But now we're doing a constitutional challenge, basically, is part of our defense, is that we're going to challenge the Constitution to say that gender identity should not be in the Sex Discrimination Act.
So, Sal, do you think this will become a watershed moment? Like if you win, a woman is an adult human female, and if you lose, it's pretty much anything you want it to be or anything they want it to be.
Yeah. I don't think it would be the end. It would mean we just have to work harder. But gosh, I think about this all the time. If we were to lose, how to build up morale again amongst women, because it will be a huge, huge hit to us. It weighs on my mind frequently if we were to lose. I have a lot of trust and faith and just belief in my legal team. They are quite brilliant. And I also have a lot of trust and faith and belief in the truth and reality. I mean, I'm just saying that men are not women, that we shouldn't be forced to believe that they are. If you're going to have that belief, okay, you just can't force it upon anybody else. Like, I'm not going to control what anyone else thinks. Don't control what I think. Have any other space you want. I mean, there are countless apps for trans people exclusively. There are countless LGBTQ apps. Create as many women plus trans women apps as you want. I don't give a shit. My point with that is not that I buy into or validate this ideology in any way. It's that I can't control what other people think or do. Don't do it to me. So I want female-only spaces to exist in the marketplace and in society, along with all of the other options that are there. That is actual diversity and inclusion. Because if you take away female-only spaces, you're actually just creating this new demographic that is the most excluded, which is a complete contradiction to everything they're claiming to do. And so I'm just sort of trying to stop them from making that big fuck up of a contradiction and being like, you can have, if you're a man who thinks you're a woman, I think you're wrong. I should be allowed to say that in a civilized society, and you should be able to sit there and wear a dress in the civilized society and call yourself whatever the hell you want. I don't care. And if there is a space that is catered specifically to your identity, fine. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Like, if we were in a movement right now that was just about men who like to wear dresses, I wouldn't have even bothered to speak up about it, because I would have been like, that makes sense. Women fought for the right to wear pants. Now men are fighting for the right to wear dresses and some makeup. Okay, cool. That makes sense. But we're not. We're in this movement where if that man wears a dress, I have to see him actually legally as a woman. That is nonsense.
Well, it's worse than that. I'm a man and I know how we work, and it's never just the dress. It's always sex stuff. It's whatever we do. We start cults for sex stuff. If we put in the dress and the makeup on, it's always sex stuff. What do you think, Ricky?
But
100%.
Yeah, even with that though, because I think about this all the time, because I'm like, I wouldn't care if there was a movement about men wearing dresses. And I think of it in the autogynephile world still, and I know so far too much about this condition. They still have the human right to wear a dress. I'm not going to stop them from wearing a dress. I just don't want them to force me to think that they're a woman. That's it. Wear whatever the hell you want for whatever reason. It might make me feel sick what the reason is. Like, you might have a boner under that dress. That's gross. But whatever.
Well, no, Sal, don't you think some of these people, I'm so outraged by elements of this, by a lot of this. Okay, I don't even know where to start. So there just seems to be this air of frivolousness about this case being brought, against you. It seems that there's a lot of grifting going on. I can't believe. I mean, look, the lawyers are just doing their job on the other side. But I mean, how could you stand yourself going home, like being a straight-laced lawyer, doing a total bullshit case, then going home to your wife and your little girls, and then just go, how was your work, Daddy? Oh, well, yeah, doing good today. And you go, and I mean that it just blows my mind. The what's going on here.
I think you've actually hit on a really key part of it there, is that every single one of us actually makes decisions in our life based on biological sex. And so to go and work against that and to take that right away from other people is quite an unusual thing to do. So if you are someone who goes home to your wife or husband, and no matter what your biological sex is, so you might be a woman who goes home to your wife, or you're a woman who goes home to your husband, or vice versa, whatever the situation is, you have made that decision of who you're going home to on the basis of biological sex. We don't look across the bar and go, I wonder what their legal sex is. We say, what's their biological? We don't even say what their biological sex is. We clock it instantly. It's apparently it happens milliseconds faster in women than it does in men to understand and to see. It's just an evolutionary skill, because we would have had to have known, like back, like, on the savannah, like back when we're talking beginning of human history times, because if the men were coming towards you, we're talking fighting tribes, we're talking women there being hunter gatherers, how they would have interacted if they'd seen a man coming towards them, what that would have meant. These are proper skills for survival that we had, and we still have them, just in slightly different ways, like how our lifestyles have changed or society has changed. But they are really important for everybody. So to legislate and say that you can't acknowledge biological sex is going against complete human nature, something that everybody in that courtroom would have made decisions based on. So I will say that I'm just very happy to be on the side that is not going against human nature or what everyone else has made their decisions upon. I think having to prove that men and women is quite the challenge.
But there's also another way of looking at it, and I think I've brought this up on previous podcasts when we've talked about you when you weren't around. But this is also a entrepreneur and a business owner and a creator versus a destroyer to me. Like or someone who is like, I mean, some of these people need to get back to work. Like, honestly, think about the time of two lives and families that they have, that the other side have wasted here. The human potential they've wasted on what I'm sorry. I normally I'm a lot more measured, but this to me just seems totally open and shut, totally common sense. It's just like all of this time and money wasted for something that some judge at the very end is going to say, I deem this to be bullshit. That's what's going to happen.
I was listening to John Anderson, the former Deputy Prime Minister, on trigonometry last week, and he listed 4 things that Australians or people in general, I think he was talking about people in general, but as the Australian Deputy Prime Minister, let's just put it in that context, that you should have, which is freedom of belief, tick, freedom of speech, tick, freedom of assembly, tick, and freedom of property ownership. When I listened to him, and it was just one sentence he said, and I was like, they're actually the 4 things that are under attack for me right now. It's not what this case is dealing with, but that is what is actually under attack. It's not what this case is dealing with in a legal term, I mean, but like just in a conversation of when you can make people realize what's at stake here, is that I don't believe that men are women, so my freedom of belief is there. I'm not going to say men are women, it's my freedom of speech. I want females to be able to block men from an event, a space, whatever platform that they're in, that is female only, and it requires that. And for men to be able to do the same. We're talking just recreational refuge type things. We're not talking about boardrooms or governments or anything, where decisions are made, where we've all agreed now that real progress has been made and they need to be unisex. I'm talking about the spaces that we need, this really human thing where we just want to go and hang out with our own sex. It seems to be quite a human trait because both sexes want to do it. All sexualities want to do it, maybe for varying different reasons, but it seems like a really basic human thing. And then the next thing is like the ownership of property. I mean, this is my business. So I do feel like every aspect of my really basic human rights are under attack. And, when you have a situation, go, well, who do I go to? Because the Australian Human Rights Commission aren't my friend. And then the Minister for Women in Queensland, where I live, she just got on Parliament floor last week and said that not only does she think that anyone who identifies as a woman is a woman, but that's also what the Queensland government thinks. And it's like, okay, so I can't go to you for help. So I have no one. So who's the oppressed person here? Because it doesn't seem like the person who's got all of these institutions on their side is the marginalized. And I don't want to be marginalized. I don't find any virtue in that. I live my life that I can go out and be whoever I want, in the sense of like, I can go and achieve what I want, and nothing's stopping me. It's just going to be, a lot of hard work and grit. And this is a roadblock to that, unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Well, perhaps let's talk about your creation, your livelihood. Can you tell us about the new iteration of Giggle? What's Giggle 2.0 like?
Yes, so I don't want to tell the name or anything yet because that's still like top secret. But basically, the new version of it is going to be, just to put it in like the simplest terms, female-only Twitter, and then also a female-only dating platform. So they're the two things we'll launch with at first in our one-stop shop for women, and then we'll add in the other things like the roommates app and freelance and
Female only dating app, as in
lesbians.
lesbian?
Is there any other comment?
Well, no, it's just that we haven't heard of lesbians in a while, so they've sort of been erased. So when
Yes.
I'm like, females who like females, what are they?
Yeah, it's the L. It's the first letter.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gosh, I'm obviously, I'm not a lesbian woman, but my best friend is. I've been around lesbian women my whole life. Just friends with these women. Seeing what they're going through has, I don't know if it's like made it any more real in the sense, how do you answer this? In the sense that we're all going through something with it. And as I said, the freedom of speech, freedom of belief and all of that, I think that actually affects everyone in society. But in terms of the LGB community aspect of it, and what lesbians are going through and how ostracized they are from that community because they won't include men in their dating pool, renders that whole community utterly useless. And that's just another layer of bullshit that they have to contend with, and the shame that they're being made to feel. And I just, it breaks my heart. And when we were doing a female only platform, it was like doing a dating element of it. It was sort of a no-brainer. I will say this, in 2019, I was told not to do it. We didn't have it in the very initial iteration of the app. I was told like, no, don't do it. Don't make it a dating app to start off with. So we didn't. And then we incorporated it. But now we're launching with just that, and with that and the sort of female only social network. And it will be available on computer, like website, iPad, like tablet, and smartphone. So it'll be three ways, whereas before it was just smartphone. So rebuilding it and implementing what we've learned has been this huge operation because, we made mistakes. We're just a startup. Like, doing a startup is hard for anyone. This is not an easy industry, and it's not for the faint-hearted. Like,
But there's no comparable product either, right? Because if there was, they'd be in court as well, right?
No, yeah.
Like, isn't that so what we're talking about here is a completely unique, it's a one of a kind thing. It's not like you've gone, I'm making Twitter and it's exactly like Twitter. It's like Getter or something or whatever. Like, it's like, this is
Truth
like
Social.
Yeah, Truth Social. No, this is like completely unique because, as I said, if it existed, it's just a numbers game. They would be standing next to you in the dock.
No, totally. But it's part of my thing as well that, we can do all of different things to protect the company, to make sure that the company we can have a company like going forward. But if an Australian court was to tell me that I had to admit men onto it, I'd just close it down. It's not like there's no app he'll ever be admitted on. I'd close the thing down because, well, what does the Australian court sentence me to? What, inventing Twitter? It already exists. My unique selling proposition's gone out the window. You've made it illegal. Like, the whole thing is it's female only. We're not reinventing any technological wheels here. It's just social media that is female only. Because, and as I said, this was not a controversial topic because the first ever niche app to take off was based on biological sex. It was Grindr. It was for gay men. And it didn't have to have crazy security on it or anything because women just left it alone. Because, 10 or so, 12 years ago when it first emerged, it wouldn't have occurred to any woman to go on it. It was for gay men. Now we're in a slightly different zeitgeist, and Grindr has really suffered from that. But yeah, I just never thought that this would be as controversial as it is. It has shocked the hell out of me.
But doesn't it speak volumes? I mean, maybe you've covered all this elsewhere, Sal, but doesn't it speak volumes that that you're not a man and this is happening to you? Do you know what I mean? Like, how come it's not a man? How come it's not a man who's created this app that is being, raked over like this? I think the answer is pretty simple.
Yeah. I said this in my speech in Parliament the other day, that we've had media come at me or other companies who refuse to work with us. I mean, we wanted to do equity crowdfunding at one point so that women would be able to basically have ownership in it as we grew it. And no equity crowdfunding company in Australia would work with us. And you have to do equity crowdfunding, you have to have a registered company guiding you through it. None would work with us, and they said it was because of the trans issue. But women or females who have a trans identity have always been welcome on the app. Like, if you think of yourself as a trans man, you still can come onto the app because you're female. It's your biological sex that matters, not your gender identity. So it was never actually the trans issue that they had a problem with. It was the male issue, which it was a female-only app. What the fuck were they expecting? It's an app for females. Oh, do you allow males? No. Oh, you're a bigot. It's bizarre, but that has been the thing ultimately with gender ideology and how it's captured the zeitgeist. I mean, if you notice, with the sports issue, the amount of time that is dedicated to trans women in women's sports is 99% of the time. There's no trans men in men's sports. I think there's been one. I'm sorry, I think there's been one, maybe two. But they're of no threat. Most of them can't compete in it because the testosterone they're taking is classed as doping. So if they're going to compete in it, they have to not take any hormones. And so essentially, stop their transition, quote unquote. But no woman can even compete in that category. It's not because women are worse or whatever. It's just that men and women have different physical abilities. And we love to watch sport and have it sex segregated so we can see the best of women and the best of men. And seeing women get absolutely trampled on by men is not entertainment, nor it shouldn't be. And so, yeah, this has never been the trans issue because we don't care about females who call themselves trans. It's all about males who call themselves trans. So that's why it's not an app for males who are being taken to court by females. Is because, you know what? Socialization is a real thing. They wouldn't do it. They haven't done it. They haven't done it in sport. They haven't done it for anything. We don't see trans men on magazine covers being the CEO of companies and politicians and getting awards. The only time we see them is because they're pregnant. And when we see the trans women, they are winning awards and races and whatnot. I mean, this is
killing it.
Yeah, this is just basic run-of-the-mill 1950s sexism. It's just with different outfits. That's it. And the sooner more people realize this, the better. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But I think you have to go through the journey yourself and do the research to actually see it for it to resonate.
Well, so maybe to wrap up, you could let our listeners know how they can help you and your situation. What are the things that we can do?
Okay, so I have to raise a lot of money. I think we're $140-something thousand into raising money yet, and I've paid the bill. We've spent it. We've spent $155,000 so far, so I haven't paid the full bill. Legal fees so far have been $155,000 to get us to this point. For federal court in total, it would be about $500,000. If it goes to the High Court, it will be anywhere up to maybe even slightly more than $1 million, but let's just say $1 million because I'm hoping that would be as much as it would be. But so one of the reasons why the new platform is delayed and taking longer is because we had to take time out to build our own crowdfunding site. And we did this because women in the UK who have been taken to court and have gone to crowdfunding to do it, say Maya Forstater, Alison Bailey, a few other women, they either built their own or they got kicked off the existing ones. They had to go and find these different like niche crowdfunding sites that would allow them to go on to crowdfund for their quote unquote bigotry. And we in Australia did not have the option of those other like sort of niche crowdfunding places because they were UK specific. So it was like sort of GoFundMe and a few others like, and that was it. But they all have very specific terms and conditions, and they can kick you off at any point because they want to. And you just have a bunch of trans activists contact them and say they're bigots, and they kick you off. And so then you have to go and try and find it and do it again. I just didn't want to deal with any more stress because this is stressful enough. So we just built our own from day dot to bypass all of that. And there is great irony in the fact that we have built our own crowdfund because we knew we'd get kicked off an existing crowdfund to go and defend ourselves for kicking off a man from a female-only platform. But that's a given. So yeah, it's gigglecrowdfund.com, and yeah, we have to raise a lot of money. All the information about the site is there. It is written by my legal team, so I haven't written it. We'll update it when there's more information, but I mean that's sort of slow at the moment. There's no new stuff. They're just working hard behind the scenes. But yeah, basically money. Money is how you can help. And I hate it. I hate asking for money. I've never been this person in my life. But yeah, basically, give me your superannuation fund.
Well, everyone, look, do what you can, because it sounds like this story as we heard tonight, it affects everyone. And look, Sal,
it does, just quickly say that, like, it does, because it affects men, because it's like men also have the right to be able to say that that person in front of me is a man or a woman, and noting their biological sex. And men also should have the right to free speech and say it. Then also, if you're a dad, what your daughters are doing or what your sons are doing, and wanting to make sure that your sons are respectful of women, and that your sons have their own male-only spaces that girls aren't in there embarrassing them. I mean, all of this stuff is really basic stuff that has been established by society. It works, and it's being degraded, and it needs to be fought for, and we need to be able to speak the truth. So, yeah.
Well, all I'd say, Sal, is that, look, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. I'm sure we'll talk to you again before that. But at this point, it's I think when your kid grows up, they're going to see and they're going to know how hard you fought. It's not about the winning or losing. I can't speak for, but the quality of the fight is top shelf.
I often think about what Belle will say when she's older, and I think that she'll sit there and go, well, then what do you mean you were fighting in court to say men aren't women? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'll be like, the fact that you can say that is because I fought it.
Exactly. You are a screenwriter, you see?
Oh, great stuff.
It's always a pleasure having you on, Sal. And this thing is real. So I'll be right there with you. Now, what is our final question? And now you've been quite busy with a lot of things, but we need to know what you're reading right now.
Okay, so I don't read books at the moment. I actually only listen to them on audio. And so if a book has come out on audio, I get really annoyed. And so I'm really annoyed at the moment because Brendan O'Neill's latest new book has not come out on audiobook yet. And so because there's not a latest book on audio that I've been able to read recently, I'm just like big into podcasts. And so I have to give a shout out to my other favorite podcast, which is Red Femme, which is by two women. One of them is in the UK, one of them is Canadian, Dr. Jen and Hannah, and they have really sound analysis of like different issues with all of this. And they come at it, they've got different political ideologies. And sometimes, they'll say things or like labels and stuff where I'm like, I don't need them, whatever. But their analysis is really sound, and they're really fair with everything and funny and insightful. And so, yeah, I'm just like, go and listen to them because they're brilliant.
Yes, well, we've had Dr. Jen on the show, and
brilliant episode. She's fantastic.
And Hannah is booked, so we've got the whole gang. We love them. They're so well, I don't know. Intelligence an embarrassing word to use, but they are really intelligent and clear.
what they have, when I studied philosophy at university, and my philosophy professor was able to do this, and they remind me of him, that he could just remember, things he'd read off the top of his head. But anyone who would have just listened to me stumble through going, oh, I think I read something here. They just can cite it. They remember all of this stuff, and it makes a conversation so much clearer and interesting when your person speaking can speak clearly like that, which I fail to do. But yeah,
And say words good.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Sal. Keep us posted.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the New Flesh podcast. If you like our work, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or even writing us a review. It really does help the show reach a wider audience. We'll be back with another episode next week. Until then, long live the New Flesh.